It started like any other cloudy afternoon. I was walking past the outskirts of the old landfill site, the kind of place most people avoid, smelly, forgotten, silent. But that day, something was different. A faint scratching sound, almost drowned out by the wind, caught my attention. I followed it, past broken furniture, plastic bags dancing in the breeze, and rusted scrap. That's when I saw her. A tiny white puppy, barely skin over bones, trapped in a rusted metal crate, half buried under garbage. Her fur was filthy, but her eyes, those eyes didn't just plead for help. They screamed of something deeper. As I approached, she didn't bark. She didn't whimper. She simply stared, frozen, exhausted. I knelt down, heart pounding. That's when I saw it. On the inside of the crate, scratched into the metal with what looked like her own nails, were strange marks. Not paw scratches. These were lines, deliberate, repetitive, haunting, almost like she had been trying to write something. I didn't understand it then. But when I finally got her out and looked closer, what I saw chilled me to the core. A message. Not words, exactly, but something heartbreakingly human in its desperation. This wasn't just a stray pup looking for food. This was a soul trying to be heard. And what she scratched inside that crate changed everything. The rusted hinges of the crate groaned as I forced the door open. It didn't take much strength, just a steady grip and the courage to confront whatever had happened inside. The metal frame was coated with grime, bits of plastic, and layers of dirt that built up over time. It was as if the crate had been forgotten by time itself. Inside, the white puppy didn't move. She just stared at me with a hollow kind of stillness that didn't belong on something so young. Her fur was matted with filth, her ribs poking through her skin like sharp reminders of how long she'd been trapped without food. Her paws were raw, scraped, bleeding, and it was clear she'd spent hours, maybe days, clawing at the inside of the crate. I whispered softly, kneeling beside the opening. "Hey there, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." She flinched but didn't run. Maybe she was too weak. Maybe she was too used to being afraid. My hand trembled as I reached into the crate. She didn't bite. She didn't growl. She simply let me lift her, her body limp and light, so heartbreakingly light. That's when I noticed them again. The scratches on the inner walls of the crate. Deep grooves etched into the metal, almost like a desperate attempt at communication. They weren't random. There was rhythm in them, repetition. Some scratches were short and clustered, others long and looping like frantic handwriting. I held her gently and stepped back, staring at those lines. It was unsettling how intentional they looked. I carried her to my car, wrapped in the old hoodie I kept in the back seat. She didn't resist. She simply curled into a ball, her tiny body shaking from cold or fear, or both. I called the local shelter, but they said their hands were full. Typical. That's when the decision hit me. I'm taking her home. I had no clue how to care for a traumatized, starving puppy. My apartment barely had enough room for me, let alone a dog in recovery. But something about those eyes and those scratches had sunk their claws into my conscience. I couldn't unsee her. Back at my place, I bathed her carefully, wiping away layer after layer of grime. Her white fur slowly began to emerge, revealing a beautiful coat beneath the dirt. She never barked, never yelped, just trembled. After the bath, I fed her bits of boiled chicken and rice. She ate slowly at first, as if unsure if the food was real or a cruel trick. But then, with quiet determination, she finished the bowl. I placed her on a blanket by the heater, and that's when I pulled out my phone and looked again at the pictures I'd taken of the crate. Zooming in on the scratches, I saw it clearly now, a repeating pattern. 5 short lines, then 4 longer ones, like dashes, then 3 short ones again, over and over. I sketched it on a notebook, wondering what it meant. Could it be a code? Could someone have trained her to scratch it? Or had she seen something? Was it a cry for help? But the thought that chilled me the most was, what if she watched someone else scratch it first and just copied them? That night, I barely slept. She rested beside the heater, curled up tightly, still too quiet for a puppy. I Googled everything I could about dog behavior, abuse cases, even animal communication symbols. Over the next few days, she began to open up just a little. She'd lift her head when I walked into the room. Sometimes she'd wag her tail faintly. I named her Luna because her fur, now clean and soft, reminded me of moonlight. I kept analyzing the crate scratches. I even uploaded the images to a pet behavior forum. No solid answers, just theories. One user suggested it resembled an old Morse code structure. Another said it looked like a child's attempt at tally marks. But one message stood out. You sure she was the first one in that crate? That thought haunted me. What if Luna wasn't just a victim, but a witness? The crate wasn't designed for long-term use. It was a cheap, collapsible metal model with sharp edges. No water bowl, no bedding, just isolation and rust. Something, or someone, had left her there on purpose. One night, while scrolling through a missing pet database, I stumbled upon a listing that made my heart stop. White puppy, female, left eye slightly lower than right. Last seen near the industrial landfill. The listing was a month old. The photo looked eerily like Luna, except she looked healthier in it. The owner's name was Mira. I messaged her immediately. She replied within an hour. I'm on my way. When she arrived the next morning, she saw Luna and burst into tears. She's alive. Oh my God, she's really alive. But the reunion wasn't as smooth as I'd imagined. Luna didn't recognize her. She stayed close to me, almost hiding behind my legs. Mira knelt down, whispering her name. Snowball, it's me. Mira. Snowball? It took hours and many patient moments, but Luna, or Snowball, finally sniffed her old owner's hand. Mira had brought her favorite toy, a chewed-up duck, that finally made Luna lift her ears and wag her tail properly, for the first time. Then Mira told me everything. Her dog had been stolen during a break-in. The police never followed up. Days turned into weeks. Then someone messaged her anonymously, demanding money and threatening that she'd never see that white rat again. She thought it was a scam, until she saw the listing again. On a dark web for Mira, was directed to buy a friend. I think they were running some kind of sick experiment, she whispered. I don't know who, but the crate, the markings, they weren't from her. They were already there when they put her in. I stared at her. What do you mean? They sent me a photo of the scratches. And a message. She's smarter than we expected. For the first few nights after Mira took Snowball home, I couldn't sleep. Even though my apartment was quiet, the memory of those scratch marks clawed at my thoughts. I kept zooming in on the pictures I had taken. Those neat sets of short and long gouges etched into the crate's wall. They weren't random. I could feel it in my bones. And Myra's words echoed in my mind. She's smarter than we expected. Jose? It didn't feel over, and I wasn't ready to let it go. A week passed. Then one evening, just as the sky began bleeding orange into purple, my phone buzzed. Mira, can you come? Something's wrong with Snowball. When I arrived at her flat, Mira was pacing. Snowball, no, Luna, as I still thought of her, was curled up in the corner, trembling, eyes fixed on the television. I turned on the news, and she just froze. Mira whispered. The TV was showing a story about a busted animal smuggling ring at the city port. Crates, dogs, dark footage. One frame, a rusted metal crate in a landfill, flicked across the screen for a brief moment. Luna began to growl, softly, but it was the first sound I'd ever heard from her. That crate, Mira said, pointing, it's exactly like the one she was found in. Something clicked. I pulled out my laptop and began researching the raid. The authorities had seized over a dozen animals, rare breeds, exotics, but the report mentioned an anonymous tip. No arrests, no clear leads, just silence. That night, back at home, I looked again at the scratch pattern photos. 5 short lines. For longer, 3 short, repeating. I mapped them on paper, trying to think like the kind of person who would carve a code into steel with their own claws, or perhaps with a tool. And then it hit me. It wasn't a dog that made those marks. They weren't claw marks at all. They were etched, deep, clean grooves, scratched in straight lines, like with a nail or screwdriver. too precise for an animal, especially one starving in a crate. Whoever had been in that crate before Luna had tried to leave a message, one that no one would understand unless they looked closer. I converted the lines into Morse code, testing every variation. Nothing made sense, until I saw it at the bottom of one image, nearly out of frame. A name, barely legible, almost a signature. Joe. The scratches started making sense. Not Morse, not tallies, coordinates. I checked the location against satellite maps. An abandoned veterinary lab on the edge of the industrial zone. Burnout, shut down after fire 5 years ago. The next day, I told Mira. She begged me not to go. Let the police handle it, she said. But I couldn't let it go. Something was still there. Someone. I drove out the next morning, a flashlight in my glove box and a bag of Snowball's toys, just in case. The lab was crumbling. Vines snaked through broken windows, and the smell of mildew was thick. But the inside had been disturbed. Fresh footprints in the dust. Scratches on the doors. A bowl of water, not yet evaporated. Someone or something was still here. In the back room, I found another crate. Smaller, cleaner, and inside, a pair of eyes, wild, watching. Another puppy, jet black, trembling, with the same kind of makeshift tally code on the wall behind her. I knelt slowly, heart pounding. She didn't growl. She didn't bark. She simply waited, just like Luna had. I opened the crate, gently picked her up, and whispered the same words I had weeks ago. Hey there, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. She licked my hand. As I turned to leave, I saw a message scrawled in chalk near the door. One more. I brought the second pup home and named her Echo. She was quieter than Luna had been, always watching, always listening. Her ears would perk at the smallest noise, a creak in the floor, the hum of the fridge, the notification chime from my phone. She never barked, not once, but she followed me everywhere. Meanwhile, I kept digging. The chalk message from the lab haunted me. One more. What did it mean? One more puppy? One more location? Or one more message? I laid everything out, photos of both crates, the scratch marks, the coordinates, screenshots from the news raid, even satellite images of the lab. Then I noticed something strange. Each crate, Luna's and Echo's, had a different pattern of scratches. But when I traced the order of lines and compared them side by side, something clicked. They formed a sequence. Each crate wasn't a complete message. They were parts of something bigger. A chain. I built a grid, mapped the tallies, connected the coordinates to a time stamp from the surveillance footage of the raid. It was obsessive, I admit, red yarn on a corkboard kind of thing. But eventually it made sense. The smuggling wasn't random. It was planned, and it was still active. I called Mira. I think these dogs, they're not just victims. They're witnesses. She didn't respond at first. Then finally, I've been noticing it too. Noticing what? Luna, she said. She doesn't react to sounds like a normal dog. But when I play videos, especially anything with code, static, or those weird glitch sounds, she perks up, watches like she's decoding it. Decoding? I asked Mira to bring Luna to my place. That night, I played every recording I could find from the port raid, the lab, even the news coverage. Luna and Echo sat side by side, alert. At one point, when a distorted audio clip from an intercepted radio channel played through my laptop, Echo stood up and pawed the screen. And then Luna did something terrifying. She walked a wall, dragged her paw down slowly in 5 short scratches, then paused, for long ones, then looked back at me, the same pattern. Again, she's repeating the message. Mira whispered, or finishing it. We were missing someone, or something, and that's when it hit me. Each puppy rescued was a carrier of a message, not just in behavior, but in training. They were taught to respond to certain cues, like encrypted hard drives with a fur coat. I went back to the article from the raid. There had been 12 crates, but only 8 dogs recovered. That meant 4 were still out there. One of them was Joe. Or Joe was never a dog. Maybe Joe was the person trying to bring the whole thing down. Maybe Joe was inside that crate and left those scratch codes as a desperate signal. Or maybe, just maybe, Joe is still out there, waiting for someone to finish what they started. And Luna? She's no longer a pet. She's a messenger. I barely slept. The patterns, the scratches, the whispers behind those chalk messages, they'd taken over my life. And now, the name, Joe, it echoed in every thought, as if the dogs themselves had imprinted it into the air. Luna and Echo would sit at the window together, staring out toward the street, like they were waiting for someone. Not me, not Mira, someone else. Someone named Joe. Mira came over the next day, her face pale. "You need to see this," she said, sliding her phone onto the table. It was a news report, barely a few hours old. A remote veterinary clinic, miles from the landfill where we found Luna, had been burned down. The article barely mentioned details, but one thing stood out. Crate discovered on site, partially damaged. Scratched inside were tally marks and the initials, J.O. I stared at the screen. "This is it," I whispered. "She's real." We drove out that night. The place was still smoking. Ashes scattered in the wind, and the smell of burnt wood mixed with chemicals stung our noses. But in the ruins, tucked behind collapsed beams and blackened walls, we found it. A crate, smaller than the others. Inside was a ragged, dirty blanket, and something else, a child's bracelet. Plastic, blue, the kind you win at a fair. Mira picked it up carefully, turned it over, and froze. There, scratched into the inside clasp, were the words, "They won't listen, but maybe she will." I took it from her, stunned. "She?" I murmured. "Who's she?" Behind us, Luna let out a single bark, the first time she'd ever made a sound. And in that bark, there was something different. Urgency, recognition. She ran into the rubble, pawing frantically at a pile of debris. We helped her dig. Buried under broken tiles, soaked insulation, and a torn, scorched bag was a phone, dead but intact. Inside its case was a folded piece of paper. It was a letter to whoever finds this. I tried. I couldn't stop them. I was one of them, but I saw too much. The dogs. They were never just animals. They were trained. Each one placed in a different location, holding part of the truth. But they weren't supposed to survive. I helped one escape. I named her Luna. If you found her, it means you're listening. Please keep going. Find the rest. Finish what I couldn't. Joe. I stared at the note for a long time. Luna pressed her head against my knee. Echo leaned against Mira. 12 crates. 8 dogs recovered. 3 left, somewhere out there. And Joe, we never found her. Maybe she escaped. Maybe not. But her message, her courage, it lived in Luna. It lived in Echo. And now it lives in us. This wasn't just about rescue anymore. This was a mission.